Hi everyone, my name is Jocelyn Renero. I am a school psychologist and consultant with Project Resilience, and today I'm going to be going over how to use fidget toys in the classroom for teachers, parents, and students. So before we go into discussing how you can use fidget toys in a classroom setting, I think it's more important first to discuss what fidget toys are. So fidget toys are small handheld objects that can be used to help children in many different ways. They can help with self-regulation. They can help with students maintaining focus in the classroom. They can help with regulating any needs in terms of movement or students that need to touch things when they are working. They also help decrease stress. And I think overall they are really great tools to use for students that need to direct their energies in a less disruptive way. So fidget toys have been around for some time now. There are many different types of fidget toys available. I know back then the first fidget toy that came out was the spinners, which was very, very popular amongst a lot of children. So now there are just so many different types of fidgets available, and as you guys know, children are not all the same. So the variety of fidget toys available is very good because you are able to determine what you feel would be best for them. So, there's different textures, there's different styles of like moving the fidget toy. So, there's so many different kinds. I think it's important to determine what you feel would be best for the student. But these are just some examples that I have used and have also seen in the classroom by some of the students that have used these objects that may be useful for your child. So the first one is the Poppets. Then we have Therapy Tangle. We have Sensory Stress Balls, which are also very good. They're very soft. Students can just hold them in their hand. They're usually pretty small, and students can just squeeze them. Sometimes they have certain objects in them, which are good for students that need that extra sensory feeling. So that would be pretty good. So here I have some more examples of fidget toys that students can use. So the first one that I have displayed here is called the Food Snack Squishies. And these are very small, they're handheld. Students can pretty much squeeze them very easily. They're very soft. Usually they don't have any objects inside of them, so they're pretty easy to just squeeze. One fun thing about these is that they do come in different characters. For example, this one is a donut, but they do have different types of squishies. So they have pizzas, they have ice creams, they have animals, dogs, cats. So it really makes it fun for the student to use. So that's one fun thing about the squishies. And then we have the fidget cubes. So the fidget cubes are very small. They have different sides to them, as you can see in the pictures. And it's just pretty much a good manipulative for students. They can either click, and usually the clicks are pretty quiet. They can maneuver different things on the cube, so that's also a really good fidget toy. Then there are also fidget toys for pencils. So the example that I have here are fidget pencil toppers. Now pretty much what these are fidgets that can be placed on top of the pencil. And students can just maneuver whatever is on top of the pencil. But they also have fidgets that can also be placed on the grip of the pencil. So I have seen some teachers use the pencil toppers and also include The squishies, they look like squishies for the grips. That could also be very useful for students. So these are just some examples of just some of the different types of fidget toys. But I will also continue to share some more examples that can also be useful as well. So these other examples that I have displayed here could also be used in the classroom as well, and they are considered fidgets. So one example is the chair bands. So these can usually go in the front of the bottom part of the chair, and students will pretty much just place their foot on the band and just use that as a fidget. Then we have the fidget strips for tables. So these are Velcro tapes. So you could place these either on top of the desk or underneath the desk of where the student sits, and the students could just, pretty much touch them whenever they feel they need to fidget with something. That is also a very good example of a fidget. And then we have the wiggle seat cushions, which could be used on the student's chair, or I've even seen some teachers place these wiggle seats in calming corners, which is very nice for students because they can sit on them. They have like these little spikes on them, and then they have another side that's a little bit more softer, but the spikes are not hard, they're not harmful in any way. It just provides some type of sensory feeling for the student. But these could be very useful to use in the classroom as well. But as I stated before, these are just some examples of fidgets that can be used in the classroom. However, there are so many different types of fidgets out there, and I think that it is important for teachers and parents to, consider what they feel would be best for their student or their child. So since we discussed some examples of fidget toys, I think it's important to look into some of the benefits of using them in the classroom. But before I go into that, I definitely want to make a note that fidget toys really are just tools that should be used in the classroom. I think that if parents and teachers feel that any type of extra support is needed in the classroom, it should definitely be discussed. But nevertheless, fidget toys can be really, really great tools to use for students. So some of the benefits in using fidget toys are they are really good outlets for students to release any pent-up energy. Sometimes students may be feeling stressed, or they just may have a lot of energy in them and they need a source or an outlet to let out that energy. So using fidget toys could be really good tools in these types of situations. They can also be really good in helping students maintain focus in the classroom. They also help lessen any disruptive behaviors that students may have. So like I said, sometimes students have a lot of pent-up energy, and at times it may be shown in ways that can be very disruptive in the classroom. So using fidget toys could be really good tools to help lessen any type of disruptive behavior. Fidget toys could also help students with self-regulating. So whether that is stress, whether that is any type of anxiety, these are really, really great tools to use for those types of situations. And lastly, they could be a really good way to help students release any inverted tension. So pretty much the same thing as what I discussed before. They're amazing tools to use for students to let out any pent-up energy. But I think another important thing to note, and I have it bolded here, is that fidget toys are very, very beneficial for students that have diagnosis of anxiety, ADHD, ADD, autism, or any sensory processing disorders. I think fidget toys are incredibly, incredibly great tools to use with students that do have these types of diagnoses, since they do help with regulating energy, regulating emotion, or just helping with any sensory processing disorders. So these are just some benefits to using them in the classroom that are, really great tools to use. So before giving a student a fidget toy, I think that it is incredibly important for the parents and teachers to find the right fidget toy for the student. So how do you go about doing this? So there are many different ways that you can go about in selecting a right fidget toy for your child. One important note to take into account is that not every child is the same. So although one fidget toy may work appropriately for a specific student, it may not be as beneficial to another student. So it is very important to know that not every student is the same. So in selecting a fidget toy, I think that it's important to maybe try to incorporate the student in the selection process. I think it gives them a sense of control, and it also allows them to, see what would work best for them. But you, as the teacher or the parent, will also see, okay, well, maybe this will work for my student or for my child. So I think incorporating them into the selection process and seeing, okay, well, what would work best for you is important. Another thing to take into consideration is that some fidget toys they come in different sizes, but I think that selecting a fidget toy that is small and that is not distracting, so doesn't make any noise, is able to withstand being squeezed or pulled, or selecting a fidget toy that maybe doesn't have any liquid inside, as sometimes when students are using them, they can rip, and liquid could kind of just get all over the place, creating a big mess. All of these things are important to take into consideration before giving a child a fidget toy. So always make sure that they're small, make sure that they're quiet and discreet, make sure that they can withstand being squeezed and pulled. And also, most importantly, I think finding a fidget toy that will be motivating and soothing for the child is the main goal, because this will help them to appropriately be able to stay on task or to self-regulate when it is needed. Okay, so now how do we begin by introducing the fidget toys in the classroom to students? So I wanted to do a step-by-step explanation for teachers, so that way you guys get a good understanding of how to maybe go about introducing it, how to implement it, and how to keep track of how the students are doing in the classroom. So first and foremost, I think it's important to determine first who will benefit from the fidget toy. Once you decide that, I think it's good to introduce the fidget toys to the classroom, and you can even do, either a small group session, or you could even introduce it to the whole classroom. Now, while you're introducing it to the students, I think it would be nice to, talk about the benefits of using fidget toys in the classroom and how it is useful in helping students to self-regulate and also help them in terms of staying on task in the classroom. So I think talking about those topics could really give students an idea of, okay, this fidget toy is going to be a tool, not a toy. And I think that is what should be really important and emphasizing to students in the classroom, is that this is a tool, it's not a toy. So I think once students understand that, then we can go into the next step. Now the second step in introducing the fidget toy or implementing the fidget toy in the classroom is to determine which fidget toys would best be suited for specific students. Like I had stated in the beginning of the webinar, is that not every student is the same. So some fidget toys may work for some students, but that specific fidget toy may not work for another student. So I think this is why it's important for teachers to incorporate students in the selection process, because you get a better understanding of what they might like and what might work for them. Because it is important for teachers to make sure that the fidget toy is motivating and will also provide some type of self-regulating so that they can use it when appropriate. Another thing is to assess if any students may benefit from fidget toys that have certain textures. So as I showed you before, there are so many different types of fidget toys available. Some of them have rough textures, some of them have soft textures, some of them have, slimy textures. So some students may benefit more from those sensory inputs than other students. So again, this is why it's important to incorporate students in this selection process, because then you get a better understanding of what may work for them. And lastly, I have this bolded because it is the most important thing to note for teachers, is that please make sure that the fidget toy that you do select is not in any way disruptive in terms of being noisy, because this could be a big distraction in the classroom. So selecting a fidget toy that does not make any noise would be really good. Now, the third step in incorporating the fidget toy in the classroom is that teachers can determine specific times in the school day that the child may benefit more from using the fidget toy. So teachers can usually do this with the student. They can either sit down with them and just discuss what periods they felt would be appropriate for them to use the fidget toy. I think by having this conversation, I think the teacher and the student can come to an equal agreement that using the fidget toy during those specific periods of time will be used in terms of helping them to complete work, or helping them to stay focused, or helping them to self-regulate. I think during that conversation too, it is important for teachers to emphasize again that the fidget toy is not a toy, but it will be used as a tool during those specific periods that they agree to use it. Okay, so the fourth step in incorporating the fidget toys in the classroom is to create a set of rules. So teachers, this is very important, as this will help students understand what is expected of them when they are using the fidget toy. So it is important to create clear and concise rules when using the fidget toy in the classroom. So for example, no throwing fidget toys. Another rule can be, I will keep the fidget toy in my hand. So they're very clear, short, and concise. So that's the type of rules that you would want to create for the students in the classroom. Now, there are different ways that you can go about in coming up with these rules, and different ways that you can go about in displaying them in the classroom. So one way is to incorporate students in creating the rules in the classroom. So you can ask the students, what rules do you feel would be appropriate when using the fidget toy in the classroom? And so the students can come up with different ideas, and everyone can come to an agreement to what rules would be appropriate. So that's one way to incorporate students in the process of coming up with rules. Another way is that teachers can come up with different ways of displaying the rules in the classroom. So some teachers could come up with fidget toy contracts, where the rules would be listed, the student would have to sign, stating that they understand the rules and what's expected of them. I actually have an example of that in the next slide. But this is a really creative way to incorporate students. teachers could also just display the rules somewhere visible in the classroom where the students who are using the fidget toys can see them. So these are just different ways of coming up with the rules and incorporating the rules in the classroom. So as I described before, I talked about teachers possibly coming up with a fidget tool contract. Now, this is a really creative way to introduce the fidget toy in the classroom, and it's also a really good way to involve the student in the process. So pretty much the example that I have here, the teacher calls it a fidget tool request form. So it pretty much discusses what fidget toy they would be using, how it would help them when they're using it, and then on the bottom it discusses the fidget tool rules. So these are the rules that they would have to follow, and the teacher and the student would sit and discuss these rules, and the student would then go about in signing the contract. So this pretty much helps to create a sense of responsibility for the student. It could also help the students understand what is expected of them when they are using the fidget tool in the classroom. So contracts are a really good way to incorporate fidget rules in the classroom, but like I had described before when we were discussing classroom rules, teachers could also come up with the rules with the students and then find creative ways to maybe display it in the classroom. So these are just some examples that I have here of some visuals that could be presented in the classroom for students to see when they are using the fidget toy. So there are many different ways that teachers can incorporate introducing and also teaching students about the use of fidget toys in the classroom. So some creative ways that teachers can go about in doing this is by maybe doing a short lesson on what fidget toys are and why they are sometimes useful for some students. Teachers can even discuss how students have different strengths and weaknesses, and how some students may even struggle to, stay on task. But using the fidget toys are useful in these situations because it helps them to stay focused. So I think by incorporating these lessons will really help everyone in the classroom, not just the students using the fidget toys, but everyone in the classroom understand what a fidget toy is, why maybe some students may be using it and why maybe they're not using it. So these are just really good ways to just teach students about fidget toys. Now, another fun activity that teachers can also do is that they can even come up with creating their own fidget toys. So teachers can have, a small little activity where students are given certain things to create their own fidget toys. There are so many do-it-yourself activities online that teachers can find that incorporate really simple and easy do-it-yourself fidget toy activities. And these are usually very fun for students, and the students could even use it afterwards. So again, these are just some ideas that can be incorporated in the classroom. All right, so since we discussed how teachers could play a role in incorporating fidget toys, now I think it's important to discuss how parents may support the use of fidget toys in the classroom. So there are a few ways that parents can definitely impact the use of fidget toys in the classroom. And I think one is for them to work together with their child's school to support the use of the fidget toy in the classroom. So let's say, for example, you have a child that is using a fidget toy, and as a parent, you feel that maybe a specific fidget toy would work best. I think in these types of situations, it is always important to make sure that the fidget toy that you are recommending is approved by not only the school, but also the teacher, since the teacher will be working with that student the majority of the time during the day. So we want to make sure that the school and teachers are on board and approve of the fidget toy that is being recommended. Now, another way that parents can support as well is if they have a child that is receiving occupational therapy in these situations, it is very, very important to discuss what may work best for them with their occupational therapist, as they can come up with different ways to implement the fidget toy in the classroom, or maybe even discuss a specific fidget toy that they feel would be appropriate for your child. So, definitely speaking with them, but then also, again, talking with the teacher to make sure that the fidget toy would be appropriate in the classroom. Okay, so since we discussed how teachers and parents can help in teaching and implementing the fidget toys in the classroom, I think now it's very important to discuss how students could appropriately use fidget toys in the classroom. So one way that students can use the fidget toy appropriately in the classroom is, one, to share their input with their teachers and possibly what would be the best fidget toy for them to use in the classroom. So like I had stated before, I think this is a good way for teachers to understand, what would benefit them, because the goal is we want it to be motivating for them, and we also want it to be something that is going to be a tool for them. So we have to make sure that it's something that they are definitely interested in. The next way that students can use the fidget toys is to come up with some appropriate rules with their teachers. Like I said, I feel like this creates a sense of responsibility and also a little bit of a sense of, control, since they are inputting and sharing their own ideas and rules to how they should go about in using the fidget toy. So these are just some good ways for students to, be involved in the selection and in the process of using the fidget toy in the classroom. So after discussing what fidget toys are, how they could be implemented in the classroom by teachers, and how parents and students can support the use of fidget toys in the classroom, I hope that by watching this webinar, everyone was able to grasp that fidget toys could be great tools to use for students in the classroom. They're really great tools for students to help in terms of focusing in the classroom and self-regulating. They're exceptionally useful for students who have diagnosis of ADHD, autism, and any sensory processing disorders. These are really great tools for these students to use, as they really do help them perform better in the classroom. Again, it's also important for teachers, parents, guardians, and students to all work together to figure out what would be the best fidget toy to use in the classroom for the student. And overall, it's important to make sure that you select the correct fidget toy for the student. As we all know, students are not all the same, so finding the right fidget toy for the student is very important as well. And it's also important to make sure that the fidget toys are not a distraction for students, and that teachers are able to emphasize that fidget toys are tools, they're not toys. Overall, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining me on this webinar. I hope that through going through all the slides that you guys were able to learn something new, or maybe even add on to your knowledge of fidget toys, and maybe understand how they could be used as tools in the classroom. So I hope that you were able to learn and were able to take away from this webinar. So thank you so much for joining me.